Hi, Kenyan Christians. What Christians should ask of government to not play God, Part 3. Number 2. Today that temptation manifests itself in the form of ideologies. The third ideology is nationalism. Nationalism elevates communities of people, think ethnic groups, language groups, people who live in a particular geographic area. People seek their identities in communities, and the claims they make upon the loyalties of those people matter. Nationalism also protects communities of people from abuse by government, often by making provisions for the community to govern itself. This is where the word nation-state comes from. Ideas like the right to national self-determination comes out of this tradition. However, nationalism has a huge blind spot: the claims and rights of those who are excluded from the community. This is further complicated by the fact that communities overlap and are difficult to define. An example: how do you define the Afrikaner nation in South Africa? Traditionally, it's by their shared language, Afrikaans, but South African coloureds who have mixed racial origin also speak this language, and they were never fully accepted by white Afrikaners because their skin color is different. And let's just state the obvious: the elevation of any one group of people will, taken to its extreme, run into direct conflict with our understanding of all people as equal image bearers of God. It can lead to racism, sectarian war, and of course war between nation states. Because it puts it this way: nationalism is a bloody religion whose victims dwarf in number all the casualties of the late medieval crusades. So how should we be careful of nationalism? Here is my obligatory Nazi reference for the week. National Socialism was fundamentally rooted in a drive to protect the German people from internal threats, non-German Jews, and eliminating external threats, the countries to the west and east, and eventually around the world. The slippery slope of nationalism led to a mandate for world domination and genocide. Beware a nationalism that's this assertive. In the present day, how does nationalism influence the way you think about an issue like immigration? A government certainly has its most proximate duty to its own citizens, but are you tempted to think about immigrants or foreigners, different tribes, and citizens as us and them, rather than remembering that all are human beings made in God's image? The fourth ideology is democracy. It may sound strange that we define democracy as an ideology. Isn't it really more of a system? Yes, it is. But democracy also acts as an ideology. What it elevates is public opinion, the will of the people. Democracy as a system has obvious benefits. In essence, democracy restrains governments from many forms of bad behavior because that bad behavior is incompatible with what most or all citizens want. But here is what it misses. Democracy as ideology can lead to a belief in the near infallibility of the voice of the people. We believe something is right simply because the majority favor it. Clearly, that isn't biblical at all. Something is right because God says so. At its worst, democracy as ideology can lead to an unjust majority abusing the minority. So how should we be careful? Take one example. Public opinion has recently undergone a sea change from being pro-traditional marriage to being for same-sex marriage. Politicians of all stripes are rushing to follow this shift. Are you tempted to make it a less important issue because it's now less politically convenient to make a firm stance? Or are you ever tempted by arguments that a judge's decision wasn't right because it overturned something that had been passed by an elected legislature or by initiative? Sometimes Democrats understandably try to stem the tide of social change coming from judicial decisions. For example, they argue that changes to marriage law should not be decided by the courts, but at the state level or by the people. Well, that's not true at all. I can understand what they are trying to do politically, but the people have no more rights to redefine marriage than the courts do. This is substituting one idolatry for another. The fifth ideology is socialism. Socialism may seem to be past its heyday, but it strikes a chord with people because it elevates the idea of a fairer economic arrangement. And socialism is not wrong when it says that massive inequality can lead to massive injustice. Think of what the Bible has to say about employers with more capital having the potential to abuse their employees. The unchecked market can lead to this kind of injustice. Socialism does us a service by pointing this out. But socialism misses the limits of our ability to impose or create equality. Socialism asserts that inequality is such a terrible injustice that the existing government and system must be completely overthrown in order to eliminate it. Socialists find that once they've done that, it isn't enough to make everyone equal. So once in power, they need to consolidate and extend that power to do more. Government eventually has to take over everything. This is what led to Stalinism in Soviet Union and the Cultural Revolution in China. So how should we be careful? Are you tempted to believe that it's of paramount importance that the government alleviate a particular social ill? If you elevate that aim to take the place of God, then nothing is stopping you from trampling over all other consideration of justice in order to achieve that aim. A personal example: I work in public education, a government enterprise trying to solve a societal problem. I must always fight the temptation to invest my job with some kind of cosmic meaning beyond glorifying God. A city like Washington, D.C., USA is full of people whose idols are the causes that they fight for, the problems they solve, the people they help. I go to work every day surrounded by a whole ecosystem of those people. If I let my identity get wrapped up in the good work that God allows me to do to improve the lives of students, it's bad for me spiritually. I make a personal idol of it, and it might lead me to advocate for things that advance this cause at the expense of other good and right things. So, hopefully, we've seen how ideology can be idolatry. What can we do about it? These are excerpts from What Christians Should Ask of Government to Not Play God from the 9 Marks website. We need God's help. Renouncing all, counting all as loss, means that if we lose any or all the things this world can offer, we will not lose our joy or our treasure or our life, because Christ is our joy and our treasure and our life. That is, in smaller losses we will not grumble, Philippians 2:14, and in greater losses we will grieve, but not as those who have no hope, 1 Thessalonians 4:13. This is from the Desiring God website. Thanks for watching. Bye.